Good evening, everyone who is joining us on this call today. My name is Heidi Otway, and I'm the president of Salter Mitchell Public Relations. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to Equality in Life, Business, and Growth. This event is presented under the auspices of the Village Square in partnership with Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and my friends at Sachs Media Group. As Americans seek to understand and address the unfinished work on race in America, we wanted to turn our attention to our community in a series of conversations on equality in life. Tonight's conversation will focus on equality in our community in the areas of hometown business, the hometown business community, and we'll imagine what our future would be and the action steps to help us get there. We have a number of distinguished panelists with us today. We will hear briefly from each of them shortly, but more importantly, we really want to hear from you, the community, during a question and answer period in the second half of tonight's program. To ask your questions, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window, type your question, and be sure to hit send. Please feel free to submit your questions anytime, and we're going to try to get to as many of them as time allows this evening. We look forward to hearing what's on your mind. Now I'm going to go to our distinguished guests and give them a chance to share a little bit about themselves, their roles and responsibilities in our community, and talk about what they're observing when it comes to race and business and growth in the Tallahassee area. I'm going to start with our City of Tallahassee Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Diane Williams Cox. Hello, Commissioner.
Hello, good evening, Heidi. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Village Square, for putting this on. Again, as she mentioned, I am Mayor Pro Tem Diane Williams Cox. I was elected to the City Commission in 2018, and so I'm about to finish about midterm. And what I love about our City of Tallahassee, we have a lot of things to be proud of. We have history-making folks, we have history-makers, and we're a well-rounded city. We were an All-American city twice before, and we are again an All-American city in our hearts. And I think that what we're doing here that I believe is right, we are working together, we're collaborating with the different commissions, the different government levels of government, the university system, and we're trying to make sure we have a cohesive, collaborative effort to keep our city moving forward. I'm enjoying working with the city and county commission as well as school board to do those kinds of things. So I think that Tallahassee is a unique place. It's a place called home, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now we're going to go to Leon County Chair Commissioner Brian Deloge, who's also a well-known businessman in our community. Commissioner?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Village Square, for putting this on. Great conversation. I'm looking forward to this evening. I'm Brian Deloge. I'm chairman of the Leon County Commission. I'm going to come at this from two different angles, from a business owner standpoint and from a government official more recently. So I look forward to the conversation tonight, and I'll echo Commissioner Williams Cox, my peer there, who I love working with, some of her comments. We live in a great community, and let me just say, I'm a big believer of you realize what people are made of when the chips are down and you're having a tough time. And certainly in the last 90 days, we've seen our share of tough times, and it's inspiring to watch the business community, the faith community, the general social services, the government, small local government, everybody's stepping up, and it really it makes me proud to be part of this community. So I look forward to the conversation tonight. Thanks, Heidi.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. And now I'm going to turn to Beth Corm, who's the chair of the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce, which is a position that I'm very familiar with, having served a couple of years ago. Beth, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you also. I'll echo my thanks to Village Square for the invitation to participate tonight. I am Beth Corm. As Heidi said, I'm the current chair of the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. I also serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Capital City Bank here in town. And most importantly, I'm just a member of our community. As I think through what we might discuss tonight, and what I'm seeing in a perspective is one of collaboration and open dialogue. And I'm seeing that not just in our business, but also in the other organizations of which I'm a member. And it seems like the conversations are very similar, and they trend along the lines of, this is our moment to make a change as a community. to embrace everyone, including our Black community, our white community, and others, but more importantly, not to just take let's just do a couple of things and check that off the list, but really look for sustainable practices that create long-term and change. So I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight, and we'll probably comment from a number of different angles, again, being involved in a number of different organizations that are having these same conversations. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Beth. And now we'll hear from Katrina Tigerson, who is the leader of the Capital City Chamber of Commerce. Katrina, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry, I'm on mute. Just to piggyback on what everybody said, what great community we live in Tallahassee. And what we're seeing now is all communities are going through challenges and shifting. With that being said, as being the head of Capital City Chamber, and what we're seeing as the shift of a lot of the smaller businesses, what I'm enjoying working with and seeing that everybody is being intentional. And with what Beth has just said is we're being intentional what we're doing and setting programming and systems up that will work. And if it doesn't work for the first couple of months, it's okay for us to shift again. We just get so used to getting stuck in our own little systems till we don't even realize when it don't work. And I think that's what we're opening our eyes to. So I'm going to enjoy this conversation to listen to everybody. I think I've served with everybody on this board, and serving in this capacity is even greater.
Thank you, Katrina. And now we're going to go to Mr. Antonio Jefferson, who's the president of the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, colleagues that sit on this panel with me. I'm Antonio Jefferson, president of the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce. Also have the wonderful pleasure of being the city manager of the city of Gretna over in Gadsden County. I'm excited about this conversation because of this, is that I think every great generation that has come before us have had a moment in time in which that they could bring forth the significant changes in which impact our communities for a lifetime. The things that are written about in history books, and we have that moment now. And the people that are here participating in this conversation and all of the conversations that Village Square is going to have on this subject, I think are wonderful people that can make that mark in our community that will be generational lasting, lifetime lasting. And this is a great conversation. I think we're starting at a great point. However, I will say this, and I will warn us, all of this in our community as they listen. If we don't take advantage of this moment, our generation will not see this again. The next generation will. But I hope that, and I aspire that we will be impactful, thoughtful about what we're doing, but more importantly, make the change that we all know that our community and other communities around our nation need. And I'm thankful to be part of this conversation, Heidi and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. And now we're going to go to Dr. Shante Friday Stroud, who's the Dean of the FAMU School of Business and Industry.
Good evening, everyone. I too want to thank Village Square and Heidi for inviting me to be a panelist, but more importantly for having, sharing, and opening this dialogue to our community. You know, when we think about where we are, it is a great place to be. We have some awesome assets here, but at the end of the day, it's really about what actions are we going to take that are going to set us on a better trajectory than we are now. So, you know, having honest, open, transparent dialogue, right? There are issues, but we can confront those issues head on and figure out workable solutions. And so I would ask us to really start thinking about not just talking about change, not just pontificating on it, but actually committing the behaviors that lead to permanent systemic change that's going to make everyone in this community better. Because, you know, and I see it like on Village Square, a lot of their information, e pluribus unum, right? So out of many is one. If we all work together, we can have a much bigger pie that everybody can have a slice out of. But if we try to segment ourselves, we don't experience all the possibilities for growth, creativity, and flourishing that can come out of that. And so, you know, change is difficult. Conflict is difficult, but it's how you manage the conflict that truly determines the long-term benefits. And I do want this to be and lead to long-term benefits that not only we can experience, but that our kids and generations behind us can experience, so that out of the many of us, we are one Tallahassee, all pulling together, working together for the good of our community.
Great. Thank you so much. We're now going to go to Mr. Peter Boulware, who's the owner of Legacy Toyota here in Tallahassee. Hi, Peter.
Hey, how's it going? I'm so thankful to be a part of this panel. I come to this discussion from several different backgrounds. I played in the NFL for 9 years, and I could have moved anywhere, but I decided to move back to Tallahassee because I love this great area. Tallahassee is just an incredible place to be. So thankful to be a part of this community. And yes, I am the owner of Legacy Toyota and glad to serve in that capacity, and just looking for creative ways to serve this community. And my hope as we go through this discussion and we go through this season of our life is that we don't miss the moment. We take advantage of the opportunity that we have to affect some true change that will last a lifetime. And so I'm in it with everything that I have, and just, again, so thankful to be a part of what we're doing here. And hopefully we can move the ball down the field. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you so much. And then last on our distinguished panel is Dominic Artis, the founder and CEO of the ACT House. Hi, Dominic.
Hey, Heidi, how's it going? And thank you again to Village Square and Liz. So glad to honestly be on this call with so many great leaders in our community. I stand on the shoulders of them coming behind. And so very excited to be here. Again, my name is Dominic Artis, founder and CEO of the ACT House. We focus on putting students in one house to create one startup in 1 year, and really creating paths for the next generation to really begin to take participation in the innovation economy. And it's very exciting to do that here in Tallahassee. I am from here, moved away for a little bit, came back. And I think, as Peter said, that Tallahassee is a great community, and I'm very happy to be here serving on this panel with so many others. As all the panelists have said, I think it's a beautiful moment in time that we are living in. And I believe it's a beautiful space to really begin to think through different ways that we can begin to act together. And as Dean Shanta Friday-Stroud said, it's really about the actions that we are focused on taking to go forward and really create that change. So we're not having this conversation next year and the year after, but really making sure that equality is at the forefront, making sure that we can really bring our community to a closer knitted place together. So glad to be here, Heidi, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So again, today's conversation for all of the folks who are listening is going to be about business growth and the issues of race equality and diversity in the workplace. And I really want to go to Dr. Shanta Friday-Stroud, because she has done some research on race in the workplace. At Florida A&M University, corporate companies from all over the world come to Florida A&M University to recruit top talent, Black talent, and they take it from Tallahassee to Chicago, LA, and all these other markets, and the students are right here. And I know she's done a lot of research on race and business. And Shante, could you just give us a little bit of information about what you shared with us in our pre-conversations about just talking about race and not marginalizing it in discussions when it comes to business?
Yeah, so if you go back and do kind of historical analysis of the conversation around race and diversity in the workplace, in the early 70s, it was, race, right? So Black and white. And then as we moved into the 90s, we started to talk about diversity. And then we moved from diversity to diversity and inclusion. And as we made those shifts, what got marginalized in the process is the topic of Black and white. And some say, okay, well, diversity is bigger than just Black and white. And yes, it is. But for me, if you don't fix a problem and you just try to gloss over the problem, it's going to flare up again. And so that's why I'm, really excited about this conversation, is because I don't think it should be a topic that we should be afraid to discuss and have a conversation on. And we may even agree sometimes to disagree around our conversations, but at the same time, if we don't look at it, then, in business, what gets measured, that's what gets done. And so not doing it from a quota perspective, but doing it from recognizing that we all have value. We all have things that we bring to the table. And it's the diversity that we bring to the table that can actually move us further than what we would have been before, right? Because it's diversity of thought, diversity of opinions that move us up. And so really, rather than marginalizing it, I think we need to embrace it, discuss it, acknowledge that it exists, and then work to accept that, yes, we may be different, but at the end of the day, we're all very, very different. And so by how can we leverage our differences such that, again, we create a bigger pie for everybody to get a larger slice than trying to say, oh, I'm going to separate over here and create my own little pie. And with that little pie, you don't get as much as you would if we had a bigger pie and bigger slices for everybody to get.
Yeah. Does anyone on the panel want to follow up on anything that Shantae said before I go to a follow-up question in the same vein?
Heidi, this is Beth. I love what Dr. Stroud just talked about. One of our challenges as an employer is attracting Black candidates to the banking industry. And you actually even pointed out that FAMU produces some fantastic folks that we would love to keep in our community and employ. But for some reason, a lot of FAMU graduates leave the Tallahassee market, which I think is the opposite of what you see sometimes with Florida State University. And so what is it about our market that FAMU graduates don't find attractive and want to stay here and help us build this market in a more equal fashion?
Yeah. So I think a lot of that it'll boil down to two things. Salary is one issue, and then the other is feeling valued and included. And so in many cases, you have to look at how students feel like they've been treated as students here. So while they may have a great experience on campus, doesn't necessarily mean that that same experience transfers out into the greater community. And so that's for me why we need to look at how do we extend beyond the community, right? So, I love that we're doing a lot more programming now to get our students to get out in the city and to see more about what's happening. I can speak for myself, having been a student here at FAMU, leaving Tallahassee was like first on my radar. I will tell you, I'll never forget when I moved back to Tallahassee, I ran into one of my good friends, classmates, and he was like, I can't believe the person that walked across the stage at the Leon County Civic Center saying I'd never live in Tallahassee again is back. Well, now that I'm back, I see it as a great place to be, a great place to raise a family. That's not what I saw as a student. And so I think to the extent that local businesses can provide a much more inviting and inclusive environment for students, that they will see that. I always tell my students, salary should not be your only factor when making a job decision. You need to look at everything in total. So the whole compensation package, but also cost of living and all of those things. And so that would put Tallahassee higher on the spectrum if they had higher salaries, but you also want a community that you feel like you can be a part of. And so I think there've been a lot of programming that has taken place in the last few years to have students feel and see more of Tallahassee and feel more inclusive. But historically, that has been, I think, one of the challenges.
Right.
A couple of the challenges.
Yeah. Go, Dom, you want to talk about that?
I want to chime in a little bit here. And so my undergraduate experience is at Florida A&M University, Heights of Seven Hills. And my graduate school experience was at Florida State University, and had great experiences at both institutions. But when we think about what does it mean to actually attract students to actually live in Tallahassee, I think Dean put it out great as far as looking at salary, but also looking at a community where you feel included. But I think there's other amenities and other elements that students actually look at when they're thinking about these first entry-level job decisions, right? And most of it does stem around money, but also it stems around a city that is very quote unquote perceptually exciting as an Atlanta would be, or Miami would be, or New York would be. And I think that's a challenge that we have to think through. And I think that also has another realm of inclusion when we think about it, right? And so how do you begin not only to attract the generation, but then the segments within that generation, right? Black, white, Hispanic, and really begin to build inclusive spaces for that. I think generally, as one who was a former student here, of course, but then also our population that we serve, our students more than anything, I think oftentimes the perception from more the established community comparatively to students has not necessarily been bridged, right? We talk a lot in this community about the town and gown relationship. And oftentimes, most of the established community looks at the up and coming as far as students as, they're just students, they're crowded the streets. They could be good for some talent, but not necessarily cultivating and developing that talent through the ranks, right? Actually providing like the outreach and internships and really starting early to actually cultivate that experience. And I think it's one of the things that really just transformed my experience, like the ability to actually work with a politician locally here, and then also work with a business owner while I was in college, which then changed my orientation of Tallahassee. And so if we don't have even base level programs that begin to stretch abroad that way, then talking about really attracting particularly Black talent into the city, it's very difficult to do that. And so I think across the board, no matter what companies we own or we run, I think that's a very unique kind of problem that we have to really begin to dissect and move forward in a better manner.
Well, we have two business owners on the line. Brian, former business owner, not necessarily running the company, and then also Peter. Would you all like to address the talent issues that you face with the diversity of your workforce?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I would say just in general, we're always looking for incredible talent, and it's tough to find the type of talent that you want. And as far as diversity, that would be awesome if we could get diversity and we could get some of the college students that are at FSU or FAMU that are Black men and women to want to be a part of our organization. Again, as was mentioned before, some of the bigger cities in Atlanta or Miami, sometimes, especially as a younger student, it seems like to be more of an exciting place. It seems like Tallahassee, the older you get and the more mature you get, you start to really appreciate the value that the city brings, a place to raise a good family, a place just that is just really easygoing. But again, we're always looking for great talent. I know for us as a business, and students coming out, they want more than just a job. They want to be able to see that job and say, but if I work hard and if I do what I'm supposed to do, what type of opportunity do I have to move up the chain? What opportunity do I have to be a manager and maybe eventually be an owner one day? And so again, I think if I do want to attract that type of talent and get that talent, I have to map out a really, really good plan for these students and say, look, if you do what you're supposed to do, boy, you can move up the ranks and you can really, really do something special here at Legacy Toyota. And again, it's difficult to do. There's only so many jobs and so many positions that we have to offer. But again, when we get one of those positions, we really, really have to make it attractive. And we really, really have to look at that applicant and say, what, if you're part of us, we'll make it a special place and you can really move up and really do great things if you really work hard in our organization.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think Brian wanted to say something, Katrina, and then I'll come to you, okay?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. We in my company, actually, I think back on this, we had almost 50 employees at one point, and we were majority minority. But to the comment about students here in town and the experience they have, I think Dr. Stroud makes a good point, but I think it's incumbent on the businesses in the community, the people in this community, to make sure that we embrace the students, because as was pointed out, the majority of the students leave here after 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, depends on how long it takes you to get through. And, they know Tennessee Street, they know the stadium, they know the fraternity house and the school they went to. I mean, I can't tell you the stories of kids that I've run into over the years, and they were a biker, for instance, and they go out and they bike on a pace line out Mexicali Road at sunrise. And they have said, I never left. Or they go to the coast, or they get a chance to go something outside of the framework with the school. And I think it's incumbent on us to reach out and bring those kids into our businesses and give them a chance. And as Peter pointed out, you know, there are a lot of jobs in this community. And I think, you know, Dr. Stroud, I don't think this is the case for you, but I think a lot of the faculty, unfortunately, say there are no jobs here. You really need to go to Atlanta, Miami, New York, or somewhere else, the major metropolitan area. At a minimum, we'd love to have these students have a good experience, so that if they leave, they come back. You know, because what happens is they get to New York and go, wow, this isn't exactly what I'd hoped. I'm the reverse. I grew up here in town, went to Florida State, and could not get out of town fast enough. And I moved out west for a couple of years and realized, wow, it's a nice town. And I've come back and raised all my children here, and they've gone to the same schools and I had a great experience. But we need to, as a community, I think, do a better job of embracing the students and getting them out, getting them engaged in the community.
So Katrina, one more point on students, and then I want to shift gears to talk about everybody else other than students, people who live here.
Well, I was going to address something what Beth said when she was saying how to get more minorities into her workplace, and it went to the students. You know, step by step, it starts with the culture of the workplace itself and the head of the workplace itself. And sometimes we culturally, even I catch myself, we don't understand each other's culture, and it's not always welcoming. Even though we think it's welcoming, and we're doing our same normal routine, I check myself every day to make sure that I'm culturally correct and not offending anyone. And sometimes when people don't feel received, when they walk into different work cultures, they're not gonna, especially these the young adults now, they're just not gonna be. They'd be like, okay, not today. So it's basically setting the culture there, and it starts with the ones at the top, and being over and above. And sometimes we at the top, because I've never started in a low level position, me at the top, I have to say, okay, how does this person feel, and whether they're trying to make it to work. So it's the culture shift within every business here. So we can try and talk about welcoming the students, but until we go business by business and checking the block to say, am I really being offensive to everyone in here, not just white and black, and just welcoming everybody? Is this a welcoming environment where my employees want to stay? And that's something to ask.
So Katrina, when you say the welcoming, can you give an example? I mean, is it that they don't feel respected? Because I have not heard that, but I'm assuming you've heard young people say, I went into a place for an interview or an experience and it was unpleasant. Is that what you've heard? Because it would help us business owners as leaders in the business community to, have more conversations as we're trying to create change and do things differently.
And instead of saying what I've heard, I've experienced it. Yeah. So instead of just saying what I've heard, I've experienced it numerous of times. Yeah. And it goes on all different levels of being equal, being a female, being black. I'm gonna put a short joke in there, being short. Maybe I don't stand that high in my heels or something like that. Or I've even had to dumb myself down on my resumes so that I won't be smarter than my white counterparts. I've had to, just not go all in, even though I may have a passion. But when a black female has a passion for something, we are pulled off as being aggressive or knowing too much, or you understand what I'm saying? And see, I'm getting loud right now. So I'm just calm it down, because I get all loud and excited, and it's just part of our culture. We go to yelling at each other, and they other people may think that by yourself.
Yeah,
so, that's why I've experienced so much And that's why I have a passion for doing what I'm doing in the Capital City Chamber and helping businesses change that mindset that, I mean, just when these employees walk into the door, they want to feel welcome. No, they're not at home. We expect for them to respond, but think about how you want to feel and how you want to be treated when you come to work every day. And that's why people don't want to go back to, I mean, COVID-19 is not being that bad because nobody want to go back.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. We have a question from our audience, and it says, do you have programs connecting businesses and universities to establish internships and mentorships to open the relationships with the students and the community? And I do know that we do have programs with the Tallahassee Chamber that begun around my term as chair. Katrina, Antonio, programs that you all are doing, can you share?
So yes, so we have a collegiate chapter that we've involved at Florida A&M University. I honestly don't think that our issue is really the businesses and or specifically the chambers making the connection with these kids. As we think about why people move and build and grow in various places, I think we got to take an honest look at ourselves. And as an African American in this community, as I look around, and not to say that our community is not a great community, I've got a different view of it as I've gotten older. But when I was much younger in this community, I asked myself, why would I stay here? You know, what are the real opportunities for African Americans in this community? And I know that we, spend a lot of time in talking and have proven ourselves outside of this community of being an all-American city and being a number of things. But, as I think about it, and as I think about our introduction to students at Florida A&M into this community, especially in the business community, as they look down and through this community, who do they have to inspire after? I mean, Peter has done a wonderful job in this community of setting the stage as an African-American owner of a major corporation. But how many others are there that they can look to? Well, I can go to Atlanta and I can find many of African-Americans that are in places where I want to be. And just looking at it from the student perspective. But as an older adult with kids, I have a 13-year-old and 8-year-old and a couple of adult girls, Tallahassee is a wonderful place to be. And I have found all of my dreams as a working professional, a mature working professional, to be able to be achieved here. But as far as connecting students here, we still have a long way to go. And I would say to all of our businesses, the reason you're not getting there with these students, you have to ask yourself how you're trying to get them in. An advertisement in a newspaper, participation and investment in a community event is not going to get it. It's your long-term investment in these places. It's the seeing these kids sing, or younger adults, seeing African Americans like Peter in places that they can say, hey, this is a place that if I do the hard work that's needed, that I can grow. But your question was really about what we're doing as a chamber. Yes, we encourage our kids to see Tallahassee as a place to not only raise a great family and the safety and security that we all enjoy in this community, but to see it. But it's hard. It's very hard when you think about, I can go to Atlanta, New York, and make a lot of money and then come back here and find it as my resting place in my more mature years of life.
Yeah, so to the audience member who sent in the question, all of our chambers of commerce and our universities are collaborating to bring students into our workplaces. I get interns every year from both Florida State and Florida A&M University. Right now I have a FSU student and a FAMU student in my agency, and have been doing so since I was working in television news at Channel 40, 22 years ago. Bringing in college students, because that's how I learned, being able to go into the workplace workforce and learn in real time what it's like to be in business. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit about just our city as a whole. You know, we hear a lot that it's very segregated. You know, not everyone knows who the Black businesses are. We actually received a question from someone saying, is there a Black list of all the Black businesses in the Tallahassee area? And I do believe that our Congressman Austin puts out the Capital City Black pages for those who are not aware. So there is a list. Let's talk about doing business while Black in Tallahassee. And Peter, you want to share a little bit about your position within the dealerships. You're one of the minority in automotive dealerships ownership. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can talk about it more from a regional standpoint and really from a national standpoint. I represent Toyota North America. And unfortunately for Black men and women, the automotive industry. And really, I wish I could say that I own the dealership because I'm smart. I was a great student, but really the only reason I'm here is because I played in the NFL. And honestly, I had to pay a lot of money to buy a seat at the table to be a part of Toyota. And when I look at it, you take Black women, you don't have a chance in this industry. It's difficult. I'm one of, like I said the other day, there's only 4 out of 170 dealers in the Southern Toyota district. It's just, we have been completely out. It's been frustrating. And so again, I'm excited for this time in history, and hopefully I'll get the chance to be able to sit down with some of the executives from the corporate level, and first of all, get them to realize, look, we have an issue. And I think right now, I don't think they realize that from a corporate level, there's an issue. I don't think that they realize that Black men and women are being shut out of the automotive industry. And so first and foremost, they need to recognize that. And then number 2, we've got to come up with a plan to level the playing field. And again, unfortunately, with corporate America, they move very slowly. And a lot of times they don't want to hear us. I've had several conversations, and really the only thing that I want from corporate America is we need more opportunities for Black men and women to own. And it seems like when I ask for that, that's the Holy Grail. And I always get diverted. They always want to give me, maybe let's give a scholarship. Let's give a mentoring program. And I'm like, I don't want the crumbs. We want to own, and we want what you want. And so again, it's incredibly frustrating in the corporate world to try to first and foremost let them realize, you know what, you're shutting us out. But number 2, we want change now, and we really don't want just a small change. We don't want just a donation to a small program. We want ownership. And that's the very thing that you're holding on to. These franchise rights that you give out, you need to give those franchise rights to Black men and women. We are capable. It's a shame that there's only 4 out of 177 dealers out there. And so there's enough capable Black men and women out there. We just want opportunities. You give us opportunities, and we'll create the change in the community. And so it's an incredible fight in the corporate world. And again, it's going to be a long fight. But again, I'm hopeful that I'm all in, and hopefully, you know, they'll hear me. Hopefully they won't marginalize me. But again, it's a fight worth fighting. And I think in the environment that we're in, their eyes are open. And it takes someone to step up and lead and say, you know what, we're not going away until you give us what we want, and we want ownership, and we want this playing field leveled. And hopefully we'll get that done. But it's going to be a tough fight for us.
Well, we got your back.
So Heidi, I think here's a place to jump in. And I think that what Peter is expressing is what a lot of African-American owned businesses or businesses that are owned by people of color. Listen, it's a tough place to be out there. It's tough to be competitive. But taking that off the table, if you don't have simple things, the simple infrastructure in place. And let me just start with access to capital for a lot of our minority-owned businesses in this community. Access to capital is a crucial thing. And, you know, and listen, I think that there are things that we have power in, and I think a lot of that power rests in our community and government, because we're predominantly a government city because we're the capital, but we've got two large governments here that work very well together. But our thing is that we are getting crumbs, you know, as we think about how we've made investments in building and growing minority businesses. We've had a recent discussion with some of our leaders in this community about, you know, how the city and county participate and grow minority-owned businesses. And I just asked myself, you know, in 2003, where were we? In 2020, I'm here to tell you that for minority-owned businesses, we're almost in the same space. You know, and it's going to take a lot of courage to do better than what we've done. It's not to say that the people that have been at the levers of power, especially relative to access to capital, have just said, look, you know, we don't want to lend to Black folks, so we don't want to help Black businesses. I don't think that that's the issue. But we have tripped over ourselves with policies and things that we say, oh, well, we got to do it this way because it checks the box in this way. I'm saying in this moment that this generation has got to step out on faith and believe in the Peter Boulwares of the world, to believe in the Antonio Jeffersons of the world, and say, you know what, I am going to take a chance. I'm going to make an investment in something that's going to create an opportunity for my two boys to see Tallahassee as a place to remain and stay and grow a business, take advantage of being here. And I'll land here. Chef Shack is in our community. It won national awards. She can't even get a loan to open up a business. Yeah. Why? Because unfortunately, she's not bankable. Unfortunately, she didn't grow up with a family that had an abundance of resources. And I'm saying that when you got somebody like that that's got a talent and a skill, this community should reach its arm around it and take a chance and make an investment in that. And listen, if we don't take advantage of this moment, it will never happen for African Americans in this community. And if we don't do it now is not tomorrow, now is now. And I think we've got to take care of that. But thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. We got a couple of questions from the audience, but then I saw Dom put his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some context around that. I mean, you know, as one who's running a startup company here in Tallahassee, and even in my first startup company that I had here in Tallahassee, right after I graduated from Florida State, you know, talking to investors, kind of like angel investors and also VCs that were here in Tallahassee, I just remember talking to roughly about 54 solid investors. And I know for a fact that we had a bankable company from a tech perspective, but most of the times when you're in the South, if people don't have a similar hue as you, oftentimes they're not necessarily familiar with your culture, how you move and how you operate. And to put that in context, when you think about just like the funding landscape, you know, Antonio talked about access to capital. 1% of all venture capital funds and managers are actually Black and Hispanic, 1% out of the total, okay? When you think about that and you look at the number of venture-backed companies that were Black, that's actually 1% as well. If you go down to Black women, you're talking about 0.002% of Black women businesses have actually been funded by venture capital. Now, let's put this in context. If you think about all the products and services that we interact with, one right now called Zoom that we're on right now, venture-backed, roughly about 40 to 50% of the products and services that we engage with as Americans are venture backed, okay? When you look at like how that begins to impact national, regional, and now on a local level, all that just stems down, right? And so when we think about things like access to capital, you know, Peter said it frankly, if I wasn't in the NFL, like honestly, I probably wouldn't have been in this seat because I had to buy my way to sit at the table, okay? Now, Peter made it to a space where he was able to actually amass some cash and make it happen and carve that lane, right? Well, if you're gonna block me out, well, I have the money to sit at the table, so just make some room, right? Now, when you think about how do Blacks begin to access capital, about how do families begin to access capital, I really encourage everybody to read this book by Richard Rothstein, a Jewish brother out of California, who wrote The Color of Law. And the subtitle is How the Federal Government Segregated America. When you think about a lot of the policies that have passed and exclusionary policies that have passed for Blacks to actually access capital after abolishment of slavery, what you end up having is that these exclusionary policies that prohibited Blacks from actually accessing capital from the federal government to purchase homes, right? We all know, a lot of people on the panel are part of the banking community. We all know that a home is a lot of equity from a standpoint of passing that down from generation to generation. And when you think about when that was actually corrected, which was only in the civil rights era, and I think 1967 when the civil rights law passed, then you're talking about 100 years, right, of Blacks not being able to access capital just of their own, from taking the houses, passing that down, leverage that to actually utilize capital to actually invest in their own companies, when the truth of the matter is people that were sitting at the table who didn't look like them weren't investing. And so I think it's very important to just put that in context. Like, this isn't Peter's like feelings or Antonio's feelings or someone's like experiences in that space. Like, the data just shows it. And so like now again, it's okay, how does Tallahassee step up and make true policy change, make plans, not just the crumbs, right? Because the reality is, as one who's like paving a lot of access and pathways for people to do this for a long term, kind of just tired of having the conversation, right? It goes beyond like painting Black Lives Matter on the street. It's a good nod. It's very like, we appreciate it big time, but it goes beyond that, because the reality is the conversation that we should be having is around innovation. The conversation that we should be having is around cultural collaboration and really taking what we're doing in our community to the next level, instead of having this conversation of the early 1900s that's now persisted to 2020. I mean, it's getting old.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. You know, I was reading this morning just a couple of articles about, you know, what's happening in America when it comes to race. And I found this really interesting article that bolded very big in the article. It is literally against the law to discriminate. It is against the law at the federal level to discriminate. And so when we talk about policies and systematic changes, you have people that are making the decisions on a policy. So is policy enough? Are policies enough?
No.
How do we change the actions of the people that are making the decisions? Because it is against the law to discriminate.
No, I don't think it is. I think Katrina had pointed out something around cultural competency and awareness, right? When I, as a Black man, walk into a table and it's nothing but white investors that I'm speaking to, right? The reality is we didn't grow up in the same community, okay? Potentially we did, probably not, okay? So when you get a sense of how do they begin to socialize the image of me speaking, talking, maybe, you know, correct, politically correct, not politically correct, whatever that may be, there's a process of our socialization and our biases of how we begin to make decisions, right? And one would say in the banking community, you have machine learning and artificial intelligence now. But when you think about that, it's pulling on decisions from the past that have discriminated against minorities around housing loans, interest rates, right? And so now a lot of that information needs to be rectified and corrected. So therefore, me who's actually applying for a loan to actually like buy a third house is not actually being discriminated upon based on the numbers of the past, right? So I don't think it's enough. And I'll stop there because I'm seeing some of the other panelists and they want to jump in, but it's just not enough. It's just not enough.
Diane, yes, Commissioner Cox.
I was going to say, no one will believe that I've sat here this quiet for this long, but
the floor is yours.
Listen, no one's invited me into the conversation, so let me just pull up my own chair into this conversation.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me just say this: I'm listening to what we're talking about, and it could be summed up into 3 words: Black Lives Matter. Because what we're talking about is how to keep Black students in Tallahassee, you know, in business. How do you do that? You ask them. You got to go recruit them. I graduated from Florida A&M. They come from Detroit. They come from Miami. They come from Atlanta. They come in and make you want to come to work for their companies. They recruit you. They don't wait for you to call them. I grew up in Quincy, went to Florida A&M, interned at General Motors in Detroit 2 summers, which opened my eyes to the availability. Now, Detroit was too cold for me. I couldn't be there in the wintertime, but I took a job in Central Florida. But then I came back to Tallahassee because I grew up in Quincy and I wanted to be closer to my family. So I came here to raise my family. So if you want to keep and retain talent here, you got to go looking for it. You got to go ask about it. You got to invite them to come to the party. They're not going to come looking for you. They're not going to go look at an ad in the paper. And we got to also remember that the city of Tallahassee has a Tempo program, that what we've done with this Tempo program is taking students, not college students, but students. We got to understand that they're trade students. They're students who are never going to go to college, but will make more money than college students. And we've got to embrace them, give them an opportunity. So we bring these students in, help them get their GED, give them training. We're having a graduation. We just graduated, I think, the 3rd cohort. Kimball Thomas is doing a tremendous job with that. We're going to talk about it at the city commission meeting tomorrow. We're doing things to try to keep talent here, but you've got to train the talent, you got to want the talent, and you got to invite them to the table. They're not going to go looking for the table because the table moves. You know, we change locations, and you know we've got to do that. We've also got to encourage businesses. I see someone put a question in there that the fastest growing businesses are Black female-owned businesses. Why are there none on this panel? Well, I do own a business. I just don't have time to work with it. And you own a business. I don't have time to work with it. But nevertheless, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to make sure that we retain the talent. And we're not just painting Black Lives Matter on the street. It is a statement, but behind that statement is an awful lot of work that has been going on. This commission has been working very, very hard to try to level the playing field. We've done things to help small businesses. We've done things to help minority businesses. The disparity study that came out that showed that there has been minority businesses have been shorted. We're now doing those kinds of things to make sure that there's room at the table. If the table isn't big enough, we're trying to make a bigger table so that everyone gets an opportunity, because closed mouths don't get fed. And so what we're hearing is that we need help. And so I can speak for the city commission and I can speak for the county commission, because we're all working together to try to create that synergism to make sure we're responding to the needs of our community. Not to say that previous commissions didn't do that. We're trying to do some creative things. When COVID hit, we looked at where could we find money by delaying projects to try to keep those businesses afloat. We came up with $2 million. What other community did something like that? You know, to try to keep businesses going. I would venture not many. But is there more work to be done? Absolutely, there's more work to be done. Are we the smartest people on the planet? We're the only ones who know? Absolutely not. We have to have these kinds of conversations, real, true conversations. I will tell you that since last night, I have seen so many negative comments about the painting of Black Lives Matter on a street. If we could take that energy and turn that around, and those people who are making those negative comments pull out their wallets and their purses and put some money on the table so that we can help people here in our community, then we'll understand why it is important in this moment in time, Antonio Jefferson, that we have to declare that Black lives do matter, because we know that all lives matter, but we do know that when other lives get a sneeze, we get pneumonia. We saw that with COVID. So we've got to be intentional. We've got to be intentional and have those hard conversations. These panel discussions are great, but we've got to go deeper, y'all.
The action.
We got to be real in the conversation. Are we gonna just keep coming together, having these conversations? What'd you say, Dominic, since 1920? In 2020, we're still having the same conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to Beth, and then I'm going to go to Katrina, and then I want to go to both of our commissioners to talk a little bit about the policy piece and what you all are doing. So Beth, and then Katrina.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Commissioner Cox. I think what you said was very important, and that's one of the things that, as the Greater Tallahassee Chamber has come together with other organizations for the Aspire Capital Region Collective. And Aspire, if you're not aware, is bringing together a number of different players like Lively, TCC, private business, chambers of commerce, et cetera, to develop that skills path that will help folks who are not necessarily cut out, as you mentioned, to go to college or maybe struggling with school, but they would be excellent at a trade. And as you mentioned, that is a skill need, and it is a high-paying job that's in demand right now. So we're proud of being part of that collective to close that skills gap for both our community. Sometimes I lose my words. The people that live in our community and our employers in our community. Thank you for mentioning that that is an issue that needs to be addressed in our community. And I know there are a number of things, as you mentioned, Tempo, we've got the Aspire, but we've got to come together collectively to put that in place and encourage our community members who need that lift to get them to the place where Dominic and Peter have talked about, in terms of whether it's coming to Dominic because all of a sudden they realize they've got a great entrepreneurial spirit and they're looking for investors, or for Peter not having to go out and have a career in the NFL to be a major player at the table of a business in our community. So thank you for mentioning that.
Katrina.
Hi, Beth. Welcome to losing your words. It comes with age, but I lose mine all the time. But one of the things I just want to mention, and that a lot of the businesses here I see and I experience as a business owner myself, and I am a business owner, a lot of the businesses here and the minority businesses here, it's so hard sometimes to get the contract, and just like what Mr. Jefferson said, or even sit at a table with any of our higher up or decision makers within the community, or even in a business. When I go to meetings, I see the same group. We have wonderful people on campus, and professors that have businesses, but majority of them, they do business out of town, because it's so hard to maneuver through the politics here in Tallahassee. And then I just happen to be one of those people that can sit at multiple tables. I can sit at multiple tables. I can fit in. I can make it happen and still be true to myself. So, this question would go to Commissioner Deloche or Beth. How awkward feeling when we say that the Black Lives Matter, or the Black businesses are not moving forward, and you feel like you have done your best and you have put forth your effort. What do you think? What energy do you feel from that? And what would you? I know everybody's at the time of listening, but how can you talk a little bit about how do you feel, and you at the top? And I know we're going to pivot to that conversation, because Heidi said we're going to ask from the commissioners of the policy making.
Yeah, I got
it. We're going to pivot to that conversation. But as a white business, how do you feel when we keep saying Black Lives Matter, or the Black businesses are not getting enough? I just want to
That's
respond.
actually one of the questions we got from someone in the group asking. The first question was, Tallahassee has a reputation for being heavily driven by politics and connections. So how do we encourage those from outside of those networks to pursue business opportunities in our communities? So that was one question. And then another was along the lines of, our community is segregated, and that Black businesses don't get the same support as the white businesses in our community. So I'm kind of lumping those two together. If I see your hand up.
Yeah, well, I'll answer Katrina's question first, and it'll probably go a little bit to the questions that were asked from the audience. I will tell you with regard to Black Lives Matter and what's been happening and the heightened awareness of what's going on in our country, for me personally, it's embarrassing because I believe what you said. I believed that as an organization, and I'm talking about the bank today because I am technically the diversity officer for the bank. And I've worked very hard to look at policies and adjust, and felt like we were doing the right things. And I do believe we're doing the right things, but we're not doing enough of the right things. And I'll give you an example. Number one, I have gone back and we have got right now a multi-purpose review, both internally and externally, about how we work with minority businesses, with minority candidates, primarily Black, in light of what we're talking about tonight. And as I looked through our list of vendors that we use, and understand that as a financial institution, we do like to do business with our clients. But our representation of Black-owned businesses in the vendors that we regularly use is embarrassing. I've already had a conversation with our CEO about it. I have begun to work with the folks who manage vendor relationships with a mandate that we have to do better. I don't know that that's a percentage or that's a quota, but we have to do better than what we're doing today. And so when I tell you I'm embarrassed when I hear Black Lives Matters, I'm embarrassed because I don't know that we're doing enough or that we understand what we should be doing to help impact the change. But again, as kind of our chief diversity officer, I am committed to improving and making sustainable change. As I mentioned to you, we have done some things in recognition of what's going on in our country in the last 6 weeks. That is not the end of what the bank intends to do on a go forward, whether that's better diversity on our boards of directors, whether that's better diversity at our management table, whether that is giving our Black-owned businesses in the 17 communities that we represent, not just in Tallahassee, but outside of Tallahassee, making sure that those folks are at the table for the opportunity, whether that's investment and involvement in community organizations that are focused primarily on the Black members of our community and helping lift them up. I'm committed to that, and that work has begun in earnest. Again, just reviewing everything we're doing with a fresh look as I continue to listen and absorb where the challenges are to that inclusion that everyone deserves to have. So,
and I'm so sorry, Heidi, but thank you. And that also goes back to the question that the community asks us all the time. It's 3 chambers on this call right here.
I have questions about that. How are you all working together?
It's a reason for that. And for, and it started way before I even came to Tallahassee and started, well, I was a student. I'm not going to tell my age, but it started back when we had to split. It was not enough minority participation in one of the chambers. So it broke off into another chambers. And then the equity also comes when different pockets of people just can't communicate right. I get that. But what are we going to do now? It's been talk about it. We sit at the table about it, but no action. And so I'm just moving forward from this intentional conversation, everybody putting everything on the table. I think it should be, the conversation shouldn't just be conversations. It should actually be community driven, to show our community that everybody is working together to do policy changing.
Yeah, I want to go to Brian because, one of the questions was Tallahassee has a reputation for being heavily driven by politics and connections. And Brian, I'd like to get your take on that.
Sure. So if you look at the local governments between the city commission, the county commission, and the school board, and include Blueprint, we've got $2 billion a year we're rolling through this community. So by no means is local government kind of a mom and pop anymore. And frankly, we're at a moment in time, as you guys were talking about earlier, where we need to make some changes. We need to make some differences. And Antonio and I were having a conversation earlier this week about, you know, the problem is we have all these MBE programs and we try and meet these guidelines. And oftentimes the concern is, well, we don't have enough qualified candidates. Well, how do we raise them up? I know OEB has got some programs out there to try and figure out, but there's some funds rolling through the system right now, CARE money, which is designed to try and supplant and fill the holes from what's happened with the COVID. There's an opportunity potentially to do some lending, and Antonio and I were talking about this earlier about potentially helping out some of the minority businesses and giving them a leg up. I don't want to get in the banking space by any stretch, but there's opportunities to potentially lend some money in some cases where the banks probably wouldn't participate, and we can get somebody over the hump and get them in the game. But the reality is, if we keep doing things the way we've been doing them all along, we're going to get the same results, which is not, as was pointed out earlier, we're standing still and just treading water. So there are legal parameters and things that we can't go outside of. You know, I can't force things. There's things that we get legally bound by. But the reality is, and nobody's a better champion for this than Commissioner Williams Cox. She's always on her game over there. But I mean, the city, the county, and the schools, it's big business, and people need to pay attention, because we are rolling a lot of money through this community, and who you elect is important, and how this gets done. So I don't know what the answer is. The only other thing I will say is that I spent 4 years rolling around the country, all 50 states, and whereas in the private sector, if you've got a better mousetrap, you're not going to show anybody else because it's your competitive advantage. In government, we need to do a better job of sharing best practices. And there are some best practices in this space around the country. So if you hear of a community and you think they're doing a better job, I'd love to be able to pick up the phone and talk to some of the elected leaders and say, how'd you do it? Because there's no, pride of authorship there. And it's frankly, they ought to be able to share this type of thing. So anyway, I don't know, a little bit of rambling, but we can't continue to do things the way we've always done them.
So Heidi, if I can jump in and say that politics and connections that is how things have gotten to where they are. Tallahassee is 196 years old, and as Bev said, she was embarrassed. Well, I'm the second elected Black female to the city commission in 196 years. You talk about embarrassing, and then we have another Black female on the commission as well. So for the first time in 196 years, we have a city commission that has 3 Black commissioners. That is unheard of. And you must know that in this time of institutional and systemic racism and sexism, that is not acceptable to some people. So during the political season, the campaign season, there's an onslaught of opportunities that people are using to try to change that dynamic. And my position on that is, you vote however you want to vote. But the thing of it is, just understand that elections have consequences. And if you want something different from what it has been in the past, then you vote in your own best interest to have that. And so having a commission, and even at the county's missing the demographic. I must admit, the city's missing the demographic. But what we've got to do is, when we come together, we blend and we work to make our communities better. So if you want to break up that politics and connection that has historically happened, then change the dynamics. Make sure that the players at the table don't look like the players of the past, because the players of the past are the ones who kept things like they are and kept things out of the reach of some folks. But those of us who are there now, we're trying to position the whole community so that they can reach and that they're able to obtain. The city has a CRA. Once upon a time, the city and the county worked together on it, but there's a CRA. That's kind of a bank. And what happens there is that CRA, the current CRA, the Greater Frenchtown Southside CRA, has been there for almost 20 years. And there has been little, almost none to little movement on bringing minorities to the table to get a piece of that pie to make some things happen in these communities. Well, you must know that we're keenly focused on that. because we have to make sure that we redistribute the wealth. And you've heard me say this before, and I don't bite my tongue when I say this, and I don't mean to offend anyone when I say it, but everything we need to fix problems with poverty and those kinds of things in our community, the solutions are here. They are right here. It takes money, it takes time, it takes creativity, it takes collaboration. And I often have said, the haves have got to be willing to share with the have-nots. Because if the have-nots don't get some of the things that they need, then they will come to your home and begin to shop at your home or go fishing in your yard for unlocked cars, for weapons, and for other things. So you either pay on the front end or you pay on the back end. And I won't get into how much it costs to pay for people being incarcerated or for people being in prison because they can't make bail. It is cheaper, in my opinion, to take care of it on the front end than to take care of it on the back end. Now, I must admit that this past weekend, the 4th of July celebration, I got a little juiced up this weekend. I watched 13th, which, you know, if you've seen this movie, you understand what that means. Amendment 13 that was passed, that freed slaves. Well, it freed you from being in slavery unless you committed a crime. If you committed a crime, then you continue to be enslaved. And that is what we see in these mass incarcerations that our country is experiencing and the broken families that's causing a lot of this poverty in our community. So if you want things to change, then you've got to put people in place who, as my friend on the county commission would say, ain't afraid to make the change that needs to be made.
So Commissioner, having said that about the criminal justice system, I would encourage everyone to go back and watch the previous panel discussion hosted by the Village Square, Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, and Sachs Media on that subject. We had Ben Crump, we had the U.S. State Attorney and others talking about it, and it was a really, really good conversation. Yes. So I would encourage folks to go watch that. I want to get Dr. Shante Friday-Stroud back into the conversation with a question comment that came in, where we have the Cultural Intelligence Project writes that businesses that successfully pursue inclusion, where diversity and differences are seen as assets, far outperform businesses with conventional human resource practices. However, businesses that do not pursue inclusion authentically do worse than businesses with standard practices. And the question was, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of it depends on the definition, right? So what's your definition of diversity? If your definition of diversity is around thought and all these other factors, yes, then it may be. If your diversity of inclusion and having an understanding of the historical perspective, inclusion was to make really white men feel like they weren't being left out of the diversity conversation. And so, again, I think if we all come to the table and own whatever our issues are, and then work past them, we can make some change. So I would suggest a study that everybody should look at, and it's over 50 years old. It was done by Jane Elliott, The Brown-Eyed and Blue-Eyed Experience. Basically what it shows is that racism is taught. We all come here, and if you think about it, if you put a bunch of little kids together to play, they play with everybody. They don't look at color or anything like that. As we get older, you get conditioned, you get taught. And so then you start to segregate yourselves based on different features. So whether it be the color of your skin. Well, Jane Elliott, a white female educator who, you know, was a pioneer in this whole diversity, and it wasn't called diversity back then, 50 plus years ago, but landscape. But basically what she did is she took white kids in a rural town and showed them what diversity was. It was during, you know, the civil rights era, and they were watching it and trying to get them to understand what was around that. And so she used the color eye and a collar, different color that she put around their neck. told them, one group, oh, you're smart because of the color of your eyes and the collar you have on, and then vice versa. And so kids who had been playing together for all of their lives, all of a sudden, because of being told something, being taught something, now didn't get along. And so she ran that experiment, flipped it so the others could see. And then basically at the end of her experiment was to get people to see that no one wants to be mistreated because of something perceived, right? And so really what I think we have to get at is, you know, Commissioner Williams Cox talked about the systemic racism, right? These are things that are taught, that are passed down. Some of them actually may be subliminal, right? That we don't even necessarily think about it because you've been doing it all your life, so it's just normal. And I think, you know, Katrina made a comment about being intentional, and Heidi, you said we have to be intentional about our actions and really look and say, are we that different, right? Because I would say outside of the color of our skin, we all want, you know, a healthy place to live. We all want healthy food to eat. We all want, you know, to experience and live the American dream, right? But because of the color of our skin, we should be treated differently. And so I really think that that's from an educational perspective, right? But that then transcends everything else that we do from a business perspective. You know, Beth talked about like, hey, seeing this, I got to stop and take a look. I got to do an analysis. I got to do an assessment based on my results of that analysis and assessment. I got to do something different. That's intentional. That's one, acknowledging it. That's then saying, hey, I got to be purposeful about making a change. And again, we're not saying make a change based on numbers, but make a change based on what's right, what's honest, what's there before you. Because many times people get excluded just because you never get a chance to get to know them. Somebody may have an awesome skill set, but you never know because you say, oh, we're different, and we automatically exclude you. So I would just like us to be much more purposeful about finding more of our commonalities than accentuating our differences. Because at our core, everybody wants a safe life. I mean, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You have some basic needs that we all want. And then we all want to move up that ladder to self-actualization. Black people want it, white people want it, Hispanic people want it, Asian people, that's what everybody wants. That's why people come to the US. And even those that may not come for the choice, but because we're here, that's what we should all work together towards. Again, to me, we will accomplish way more together than we ever will divided. And I just hope that, again, we move beyond talk to real action and really be purposeful about bringing everybody to the table, capitalizing on everybody's strength, because if we do that, Tallahassee will be even greater than what we think it is now.
Okay, and everybody want to feel important.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. We have a few more minutes before we are going to wrap up this wonderful discussion. So we're going to go into a lightning round, and I'm going to just ask a couple of questions that we received. So the first question is, have you sensed an increase in support of Black businesses since racial equality is more of a topic of public conversation? Lightning round. Katrina.
Yes, we have, but it needs to be not just for these to the end of December, to the CARE Act money run out.
Okay, Shanta.
And I was gonna say, I do it all the time, but I think that's just because I want to see our Black businesses flourish, because I believe we deserve a seat at the table. But I think it has increased more, but I think it should be something that we should all seek out all the time.
And Katrina, you mentioned the Black business pages. You have one for your chamber. Do you want to tell us about that?
The Black business, what? I'm sorry.
A list of Black businesses.
Oh, yes. So on June 19th, one of the things we did, we have a Black online directory that came available within the city. So you have to go and download the app. It's called I Am Black Business. And we also connected with what Congressman Lawson is doing over there, but he has the printed copy. I went according, since the COVID-19 is making a lot of the businesses change in what we do. And so you're not always able to get the print material, and everybody always uses the option of GPSing and everything. So that gives you that opportunity to do that. And I'm like Beth. It was sad to say, as a chamber that served everybody, I was embarrassed to say that we didn't have an online Black business directory. And so we made it at the Capital City Chamber, we made it our business to put that out there, and businesses are adding on every week.
Great, thank you. Next question, are there things that we can do that will help reduce segregation of businesses without promoting one business over another? Are there non-government solutions to this problem? Two-part question. Any of our commissioners want to address that? Reduce segregation of businesses.
Well, I think,
yes, thank you, go ahead.
I think it starts with what Beth is doing with her organization. She looked to see what was going on. She did her analysis. She determined that they could do better. I think that's what we need to do. We need to be intentional about making sure that we use Black businesses or minority businesses. And I'm not just talking about women and minority. I'm talking about minority business, because women-owned businesses, sometimes their husband actually owns the business and transfers 51% of it to the wife or the daughter, so that they too can benefit from that. I worked in purchasing a long time, so I've seen these trends happen. So we got to be intentional about doing those kinds of things, making sure you're doing business with the other businesses, so that we can redistribute this wealth, because right now it's tilted, extremely tilted.
Commissioner Deloge.
Yeah, let me jump in. So Heidi, this should be near and dear to your heart. There are 3 chambers, and I realized the need for 3 different chambers, but we need to do a better job of having them work a little bit more together, because the reality is you can't have 3 separate people pulling in different directions. There ought to be some cross-pollination, and we ought to be able to work together. I'm not sure how that looks. I know when I was chairman, this was an ongoing, we only had 1 other chamber at the time, because Katrina, I don't think y'all were in existence, but it's been, it's a bit of a struggle, and it's almost at some points it accomplishes the opposite of what you hope to accomplish, I guess.
Well, actually, I'm gonna let Katrina go, because their chamber was there before the Big Bend Minority Chamber. So Katrina,
okay, I'm sorry, I got those flipped. Okay, yeah.
Katrina, did you want to say something there?
Of course.
How you all are working together?
Yeah. So actually, when all this when the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter came up, we all met together to say, how can we move forward with the community? It's very difficult. And just like you said, Brian, it's very difficult. The Capital City Chamber, the ones that are working on the board with me, it do depend on the leader and the president. And I understand it's different dynamics when I basically tell people that's on my board, and I respect them to the highest. They are older than me. They have so much wisdom and all of this. But I also tell them, we got to break down the silos, and they were all on board with me. When we move forward, and we all 3 of the chambers have boards. We all know, even all of us on this call, we have to break down the silos of working together and getting along with each other and working together. And it's not going to kill it. You got to take your personal out of it, your personal feelings out of it, and look at it as a whole for the betterness of the business community. And I think that's what a lot of our chamber boards are not doing. I tried to move the needle on that, no results. I've tried to move the needle on that a couple of times, no results. I think by us starting to have conversations again, and I know we should move the needle on this a little bit more. And I'm just being open and honest. Now, and the thing about it, being open and honest on this call, let's see what the results are going to be next week. because we should be coming together, streamlining things for our businesses, even with what the county is doing, what the city is doing, and moving it forward. Now, listen, I don't mind, Brian, you can give me a job tomorrow. I'll let Capital City Chamber go, and I'll bridge with another chamber because it does strengthen us. So, we can shift this tonight. But at the same time, how intentional are the board members at those chambers are willing to work with Antonio, are willing to work with Sue, and are willing to work with me to break down their silos and say, let's get this done for the community.
Thank you, Katrina. We have 5 minutes left. I want to give everyone a chance to give some closing comments. Dom, you're first. Closing comments.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a good discussion. I think the reality is that all of us need to have to audit our own behavior and our own perceptions and biases that we actually have one towards another. And I think that's the only way we can really begin to bridge culture, community, and commerce, to be completely honest. And so continuously educate yourselves on what's happening. A couple of books, The Color of Law, again, a great read. The McKinsey report on Black Economic Forum, I think that's a great read as well. Again, I'm here. Would love to have some continued conversation about how we actually spring things into action and move this stuff forward. But thanks, it's been good.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox, 30 seconds, closing comments. You're on mute.
30 seconds. We need to continue this conversation. This is not enough time to have real solutions. So I'm willing to host another event with these same panelists or whomever wants to be involved so that we can really move our city forward. Anybody in?
Thank you. Peter, we didn't hear a lot from you, but you did say a lot. You said you're going to be a champion, and I really applaud you for doing that. Closing thoughts.
Absolutely. Again, I think talk is cheap. I mean, in my world, I'm hearing a lot of talk, and I'm hearing a lot of apologies and a lot of we're going to do better. Well, we'll see. We've had emotional moments like this before, and unfortunately, these emotional moments, they've come and they've gone. And as a Black community, we're not any better. So this moment is a moment for us to take advantage. We do need to keep the conversation going. We need to keep the heat on. And if we do it, if we keep the heat on, keep the conversation going, I think we can get some things done. But again, in my world, talk is cheap. Something does have to happen and change does have to happen. And it starts with us.
Yeah. Thank you. Beth.
First of all, thank you for bringing us all together. This has been a great evening. And I would just tell you that my personal commitment, as Dominic mentioned, was an audit of my own personal behavior, but more importantly, how can I influence the organizations that I am a member of, and to discuss how do we move it forward and not just make this about the end of the year. I think, Katrina, you used that term, not about supporting the Black community in a number of ways just through the end of the year so we can check, but how we really affect systemic change for our community and for those of us who love this community and want to see it vibrant and thriving.
Thank you, Beth. Dr. Friday Stroud.
Again, I agree with everything everyone said, and I think Peter said it best, right? Talk is cheap. So it's now, don't just talk about it, be about it. We have to really make these things happen. I am a firm believer that education is and can be a great equalizer. Clearly, I've dedicated my whole career to education, but we gotta make sure we have like that true triangle, right? So the education, then we got to have the businesses, and then we have to have a strong community. And if we put those three together and work in tandem, I think we can make it happen. But again, talk is cheap. We got to see where we're going to go. My bet, though, is on that we can make a change.
Thank you. Commissioner Deloge.
Well, thanks. Appreciate the chance to participate. I said it earlier, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Peter, talk is easy. We've got time here. I'd ask that for those of y'all that get a chance to interact around the country, if you see models of things that we can do differently, let's take advantage and plagiarize them, especially when it comes to how government interacts with the community. Because frankly, I don't have all the answers. I'm open, and as long as it's legal and ethical and moral, I'm all in. So, but I appreciate the time and the energy, and Village Square as always. Thanks.
Thank you. Katrina.
I think I talked enough, but I just want to close and say, I off of what Peter said, I mean, that just stuck. That talk is cheap. I am not a person of just talk, and that's what I try to do from the top at the Capital City Chamber. If you bring Capital City Chamber to the table, we're going to try to bring some results. If we can't do it, a team of us will say, oh, I can't get that done. But that's when you come into the collaborative forum with every one of you guys that's on this call. And I feel like now that I can put you on speed dial and say, hey, can we work together and get this done? And I think I will be on the call with Commissioner Williams Cox, continuing this conversation because we need to look in each other's face a little bit more and get things done.
I agree.
Thank you, Village Square.
Thank you.
If we look at each other's faces, we have to wear masks and be 6 feet apart.
Well, I mean, on
We'll
Zoom.
meet on Zoom.
Whose idea
meet
was
on
that?
Zoom.
Do a
That's
Zoom
easy.
call.
Because you can have jeans on the bottom.
There
Right.
you go. That's right.
Mr. Antonio.
So listen, I'll end here. I want to know why in America that African Americans have to die to move the needle.
Yeah.
Why do we have to break the law to get change? Rosa Parks sat on that bus that day, Commissioner Cox, and it was not in her favor because the law said that she wasn't supposed to sit there. And it wasn't until she broke that law that we progressed in one direction. The only thing I'm saying to Commissioner Cox and Chairman Deloge and all of us is let's get prepared to break what we got, because what we got is not working. And again, I want all of us to stay out of jail. I don't want nobody to accuse us of doing anything wrong. And
Well, we can't break the law then because we would surely go to jail.
That's right. And I don't think African-American businesses in this community want to set aside, but they damn sure want a pair of boots that they can pull the bootstraps on. So let's work together. And I appreciate Village Square giving us this and know that the members and the board of directors at the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce, talk is cheap inside of our chamber, but we want to be part of the solution and honored to work with everybody here to do that. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their participation on today's panel. I think we had some really open and honest dialogue, and I think if we had a little more time, we'd go a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we talked about and probably could have pulled out some true action items. So I look forward to the next opportunity. And on behalf of the Village Square's partners in offering the Equality of Life series, Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and my friends at Sachs Media Group, I'd like to thank each of you for participating tonight. And I also want to thank the community members who joined us tonight. A reminder that this is the second in our 3-part series, Equality in Life. The next conversation will be facilitated by Lila Jabber of Gunster Law Firm 2 weeks from tonight at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, July 21st. To register to participate in that program, go to tlh.villagesquare.us. Good night, everyone.